The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, September 28th. I'm Donna Will, Professional Development Coordinator for the Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to the DDA's webinar on personal support recoupment. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few things about the webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode. There are two options for listening to the webinar, by computer and phone. And if you have trouble hearing, you can try switching by clicking on the appropriate button on the audio section of the webinar panel. We do have one handout for this webinar, and you can download it from the handout section in the panel on your right. We are recording the webinar, and we're going to post that on YouTube and put it on the DDA website. Questions can be typed in the question or chat box, and we will get to those towards the end of the presentation. So now I'd like to introduce Robert White, Director of Administrative Services. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Donna. If you could please go to the next slide. Good afternoon to those of you joining us today. I am Robert White, the Director of Administrative Services for the DDA. The Maryland Department of Health Developmental Disabilities Administration is holding this webinar for personal supports providers to explain the recoupment process for those of you who've transitioned all of your personal supports services into LTSS. The intent of the reconciliation process is to make DDA and providers whole after the PCIS2 reconciliation, recoupment. The intent of today is to show you the methodology used in arriving at the recoupment invoice amount. We will walk through an invoice example and how the adjustments are applied. And the goal of today is to ensure that we provide clarity. We will allow time at the end for any questions you may have. On the panel today, we have Peter DeFries, Director of Operations, Elizabeth Peters, Deputy Director of Administrative Services, and our presenters today are Paulinas Nuosu, the Interim Director of Fiscal, and Sung Kim, our Database Specialist Manager. As Donna mentioned, as we are progressing through the presentation, please type your questions in the questions section of the panel, and we will get to as many as we can during the Q&A session. I would now like to turn things over to Paulinas, who will start us off by walking you through a few calculation definitions before turning it over to Sung Kim, who will walk you through the invoice details. Paulinas?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paulina Sunwosu, Interim Director of Fiscal Services. Just as Robert has told you, our intention in this recruitment is to make the providers and DDA whole, so that at the end of the day, we'll be able to close up this the personal support portion of PCIS2 from the system, and then if there's any outstanding debt by the provider or advances by the provider, that they can then have a process of paying it back. And if at the end of the day, if DDA is still owing the provider, we'll be able to make payment on that. So the calculations are as follows. We have the quarterly advances. We subtract from it the quarterly advance take-backs, and then we subtract from it unpaid certified attendance, and then we add or subtract other adjustments. The remainder will be what will be recouped. For the purpose of this, quarterly advances are as follows. Those are advance payments in the quarterly invoice. So when you go to invoice, the advance payment, that's kind of an estimated payment as at the time, is what is the quarterly advance. The advance take back are previous advances that is taken back in that invoice. Let's say, for instance, you have an advance that was given in 2 quarters back in Q1, and then in Q3, that advance may be taken back. So those are the advance take backs. Then the unpaid attendance, are the certified attendance that is still outstanding in PCIS2 on the transition date. So we have paid advance, we have paid the attendance throughout the period of your being in personal support provider. So, but at the time we transitioned, we observed through some of the feedback we got from the we got when we published the first invoice that there are still some people in which the attendance are in the system. They entered attendance, but they were not paid. So we asked within the period for the providers to certify those attendances. So those outstanding attendance that have not been paid is what we're going to deduct. So we subtract it from the advance in order to come up with the net advance that is still outstanding. Then other adjustments, we will, if there's any adjustment that is coming from any other source that increases or decreases the provider payment, that's the adjustment of the adjustments we're going to adjust. Some of the examples are like reconciliation adjustments, or there's if there's let's say for instance a provider has we are recouping the provider kind of transition from one service to another and therefore didn't have it's not receiving that service in PCIS2. And then the only place in which they are receiving going to get a payment becomes from personal support, then that will be deducted. That will be an adjustment. So those adjustments will either be increasing if it is decreases the provider if it increases the provider owing, and also it can also be decreasing if it decreases the provider owing. Let's say if it is a positive adjustment, then it means that it will decrease how much the provider owes. And if it's a negative adjustment, it will increase how much the provider owes. So those are um, the immediate definitions of those calculations. Please advance to the next page. Okay. So this is showing you how those calculations are done. So on the first column is the year of the advance. The second one will be the quarterly advances. The third one will be the take backs when they were taken back. And the fourth one will be that's okay. One is the quarterly advance, two the advance take back, the three is unpaid advances, and the other adjustments. The total or the balance is the grand total. So if you take the grand total from the bottom row, those like in this case, you have 5,467,900.4 cents as the advances DDA made to the provider over the years. Then you also have the takebacks, which is 4,721,498.35 dollars, which is the takeback the DDA has taken from the provider over the years. Then the unpaid advances, which is the as at the date of transition, is 214,209.68. Other adjustments that are from other services, like in this case, you have an adjustment from CSLA, so that would be 154,138.64. So by the time you subtract the quarterly advance, I mean when you subtract from the quarterly advance, the quarter advance take back unpaid advances and other adjustments, then the balance is what the provider owes, and in this case, 378,053.36. For each provider, will provide a detailed invoice that shows these calculations. And if there's any additional information they want, or if there's any adjustment they didn't understand, we'll walk them through it. So, but we'll publish the invoice and then they'll take a look at it. And if there's anything they need to know from us or that is not clear, they can then contact us and we'll walk them through the invoice and then try to resolve it with them. That's thank you very much. I will turn over to Song to go through the invoice and the examples of it and the calculations.
Hello. So this is what the invoice will look like in the PCS2. So this is the one example of the payment under the. So if you go to the PCS2, there's a payment tab, and then when you click on that, there's another tab under it, which is called the payment. And when you go to that and then search your last invoice, this will be the one that will show up. Next slide, please. And then corresponding to that, this is the invoice that will be generated in PCS2. And next slide, please. And the in the PCS2 recoupment process, we are not including the any LTSS billings. So please exclude any LTSS billings from the PCS2 recoupment process. If you have any unpaid LTSS billings, there's a form called LTSS Maryland Billing Claims Summary Exceptions, which is also available on our DDA's website. And next slide. Sorry. I would like to hand the mic back to Paulinas. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. For the payment, when you have checked your invoice in PCIS2 and you have verified that the amount is correct and you want to make a payment, then you have two options to make a payment. You can send us a FedEx, write the check, send it through FedEx with the address on this webinar. MDH DDA 4th floor, 201 West Preston Street, Baltimore, Maryland, and to the attention of the acting DDA fiscal director. If you choose to do a bank wire, then email there's two emails here. Just send your email to thaddeus.hubbard@maryland.gov and copy pinwosu@maryland.gov with a blank wire authorization from your bank. We will get the information completed and send it back to you so that you will give it to your provider. To your bank. You will send it to your bank, and then they will do the wire to DDA. So next slide. Okay, so the invoices will be available in PCIS2 on Friday, September 30. So on Friday, you can go to your PCIS2, log into your PCIS2, and then you will see the invoices in there. Invoice along with the details. We will also email the details to the email address on record in PCIS2. So the executive director or the finance contact, whoever the email is in there, will send the details of the invoice to you. And the payment will be due no later than Monday, October 31, 2022. I'll turn over the mic to Robert so that he can close out on the presentation.
So thank you for that, Song and Paulinas. So we've gotten several inquiries by providers with this question here. What if I can't pay in full? And so if you're in a situation in which you can't make the payment in full, please reach out to Paulinas, and we'll have a discussion internally and handle those requests on a case-by-case basis. Next slide. So now I know we went through that kind of quick, but we wanted to make sure that we left some time for your questions, and so we're going to go ahead and start addressing some of the questions that we have here. Peter, this question is for you. There's several questions related to the contact information that's listed on the PCIS2 invoice. If that contact information is incorrect, what should they do?
Good afternoon, everyone. If your information in PCIS2 is not correct, you can please contact the service desk for DDA, and we will make sure that that information is changed, and we will then make sure the subsequent correct address is used when mailing out the invoices.
Okay, thank you for that. Question for you, Paulinus. Why aren't these recoupments handled via the typical quarterly reductions, at least for agencies that are not in LTSS?
For those who wants us to recoup from their quarterly payment, if they are still within PCIS2, we can handle that. We can reduce it from their quarterly payment.
So if a provider is interested in having their quarterly payment offset by the amount that they owe us, then they should reach out to you directly.
Yes.
Okay.
But they should reach out to us as soon as possible so that we include it on the next quarterly payment. We do the reduction on the next quarterly payment, which is coming up at the end of the year.
Okay. And I believe you answered the question regarding the detail. Again, the invoices will be released on Friday. The detail behind the invoice will be sent via email. And so having said that, it's important that you all, as the agencies, make sure that that point of contact information, specifically and especially the email address, is correct, because the invoice detail will go to the email address that we have on file. Okay. We're getting quite a few questions. Some of them are not related to the webinar. So in that case, we'll update an FAQ document and post it online. Okay, I see the recoupment calculation, but what time period is included in the calculation? Sung and or Paulinus, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, Sung, you can answer that.
That includes all fiscal years for the personal support.
Okay, if there's some part of the detail that needs to be corrected or adjusted, will a corrected invoice be issued?
Yes, I mean, if you can have a proof of an incorrect entry in the invoice, or that the details, if we can work it out on your own reconciliation, work with your own reconciliations, and then we see where the entry is. If it needs to be corrected, if there was an error in our own part, we will correct it.
Sure, and there's also several emails regarding the decar process, and if they see that something is incorrect, they're usually able to state that with decars. So if the invoice doesn't match your records, again, you would reach out to Paulinus, and he'll schedule a time along with Sung, and they'll kind of do a walkthrough of the document to try to determine where that difference lies, and then make any adjustments if applicable, or if needed.
And also note that let's say for a reconciliation that's already been done with DECA, and you and DECA have agreed on an outcome, we're not reopening to go and make changes on those. What the information we got is what we're going to apply to the invoices. So this is related to what is in PCIS2. on the date you transition to LTSS.
Okay, questions regarding the time frame again. So again, the invoice, that kind of running tally goes back to the inception of personal support. So it's whenever you started personal supports in PCIS2, and it's the time, all of those time frames, so that we can capture the running advanced balances, et cetera. Please, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more as to why we chose that rationale.
Well, for personal support, it's kind of a continuation of CSLA. So the CSLA has been closed out on the system and reconciled. So whatever is the balance from CSLA, for instance, will be just the balance that will be transferred if there's any. But oftentimes, majority of the providers don't have that. So what we are concerned in this period is the personal support, in order to reconcile personal support so as to be able to close it out too from the system. So that's why we started from the inception of personal support. If there's any transaction that transcends from any other period, like the CSLA period, then you will bring it to our knowledge, and then we'll check what is the balance in there. But CSLA has been reconciled, so we don't really go into CSLA unless there's a balance coming from there.
Okay, thank you. Another question regarding recoupment from quarterly payments. If providers want the payment recouped from their quarterly payment, would that be the quarterly payment due in January?
Yes, but we'll have the information within this month. We need the information by the due date of their payment. Let's just say we say they should have their payment by October 30. They should let us know by October 30 that they want this money to be recouped from their personal from their PCIS2 advanced and quarterly payment in January.
Okay, great. So if a provider wants us to withhold the payment from their advances, they should let you know that by October 30th.
Yes.
Okay. Will something similar to this process occur for advances under the residential program for providers who have been using LTSS for community living group home? And if so, when?
That would be our next goal, is to reconcile all providers that has fully transitioned from PCIS2 to LTSS. And we will reconcile them, and I wouldn't be able to give you the exact time frame now, but it will be very quickly, very soon.
Okay, so now that we've kind of gone through this process with personal supports, and we've worked with, we received feedback from Max as well as some other providers, and and we certainly do appreciate it. We're talking, more than just a few hours. We'll be able to model the same process for residential, and make sure that we're more timely with the communication and give providers more leadway. So be on the lookout for that once we wrap up this process for residential. For the invoice details, who is it coming from, so we can be on the lookout? Sung, do you want to talk about that? Let them know the address so that they can perhaps adjust their spam filters to make sure it hits their inbox.
I think it starts with DD. Let me check. It'll be psize.dda@maryland.gov.
Okay, so we'll come from a maryland.gov address, pcis.dda.maryland. Well, at maryland.gov. Is that what I heard?
Yep, That's correct. pcis.dda@maryland.gov.
Yeah, Song, is it PCIS2 or just PCIS?
Just pcis.dda.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay, next question. Are the new invoice amounts going to be different from the amount that was received earlier?
Some of them may be different because of the additional information we captured. We have to go back and check for those who have outstanding attendances that are certified attendances at the date of transition. So then we adjusted for that. Because of those, then there may be some differences from that. And we walk through the system to ensure that we tested the invoices to see that we are our reconciliation is correct. So if there's anywhere in which there was an error in the past, we will adjust it. And if there's anywhere in which we made a mistake, we corrected it. So there may be some minor differences in some invoices, but in the main, it may be the same thing.
Okay, thank you. And second part of that question, what if they disagree with the amount of the invoice and they have adequate documentation?
Yeah, we will work with them to resolve any issue that is, if they have documentation, a valid documentation anyway, we will make corrections. If we are wrong in any particular one, we'll make corrections. But at the same time, disagreeing has to be supported by actual facts and documents, not just that I disagree with this number because I don't like it.
Okay, this next question, either Peter or Sung can take it. How do we check what email is on file in PCIS2?
The email is under the provider tab. So if you go to PCIS2 and then go to provider tab, you can look up your provider informations, and then there will be the email listed for the contact and also for the director.
Okay. Again, we have received several questions regarding the PCIS2 recoupment over the last few weeks. I think since we sent out the initial invoices. For some of you, we have said, more information will be forthcoming, and now we're doing this webinar. So please, if your question is still valid after the guidance that we sent out last week, as well as this webinar, please still send me your email and we'll get back to you. There's another question related to, repayment, and if a provider is unable to make the payment or meet the deadline, again, reach out to Paulina's and with your specific case, and he will share that with senior leadership, and a decision will be made on how to move forward. Will the new invoices be out October 3rd? The new invoices will be available in PCIS2 by close of business this Friday, so September 30th. So you should have the access to that new invoice on October 3rd. Paulina's question for you: can the advancement, or I'm sorry, let me rephrase this. Can the recoupment be taken from more than one quarterly payment?
No. we will take it. We want to be able to account for where we got the money and when we got the money. So if we're going to take it from the quarterly payment, we're going to take it from a particular quarter.
Okay. If an agency missed certifying any outstanding attendance, can that be done now?
No, we gave them chance. That's why I even dragged for another 1 month. We sent out a memo communication advising them to go back and certify any outstanding attendance in the system. So that has closed and we did the reconciliation. We're not be entertaining that anymore.
Okay, and I think you, for this particular provider, your question is, can providers choose to have a certain percentage taken out from the quarterly payment? So I think if you could add some information. So are you asking if you could write a check for 40% of it and have 60% taken out of the quarterly payments? Or are you asking if like 50% could be taken out of the next quarterly payment and then the next 50% taken out from the quarterly payment after that? So if you could just give us some more information, help us better understand your question, that would be awesome. Okay, so what supporting information will accompany the invoice that supports the DDA claim? Sung, perhaps for this question, we could ask Donna to go back a few slides to look at the detail. This might be helpful.
Yeah, please go back to slide 4. Yep, so this is the general summary view of the invoice detail you will receive. And when you double click on the numbers, it will show all the amounts that are, so you'll be able to see all the details that comes out to this total amount.
Yeah, the invoices are like a pivot. If you double click on it, then it will be able to give you the tab that shows you the transactions that went into it.
Okay, thank you. Got confirmation or clarification regarding the quarterly payments. So this individual wants to know if they could have a certain percentage. For example, if, could they have 50% of their advance withheld to go towards the recoupment amount in one quarterly payment, and then the next 50% withheld from the next quarterly payment until they've satisfied the recoupment amount?
No, I would say no to that. I would rather, I want to have a clean recoupment. So we will either take recoupment from you sending us a check, or we take it from a quarterly payment, whichever option is best suits your situation. Any other information or any other request should be sent to me in writing, and I will discuss with management.
So yeah, I would just underscore that last part of Paulina's answer. We want, this is not meant to put an unnecessary financial burden on you all as our providers and or create cash flow issues. So please, if you need to discuss, something unique with us, please send the request to Paulina's and we'll consider it and work with you to come up with some feasible options. Just one more time on the email on file on PCIS2, Sung, if you could just once more explain how they can go in and update that email address.
What was the question? You want the email address?
Yeah, how to update the email address in PCIS2.
Please contact your regional office to update the information, or you can also send email to the service.desk DDA. It's a service desk email for the DDA. Let me look it up. Yeah, servicedesk.dda@maryland.gov.
Thank you. Someone asked about the email address again, the email address that the invoice will be coming from. So I'm putting that in the chat so that everyone has it, but it's pcis.dda@maryland.gov. Okay, just scanning, looking for questions we've not answered yet. Let's see. Okay, there's a question in here that we'll go ahead and address. It's about, we've submitted manual billing claims for services with exceptions in March of 2022 and still have not been paid. Who can we contact to see about that? Please send your inquiry to Paulinas with me on CC, and we'll look into that issue. Will this webinar be applicable to the Self-Directed Services Program? No, this webinar is not applicable to our participants who are self-directing their services. This is only applicable to the DD providers of personal supports.
In PCIS2. Providers of personal support in PCIS2. So once they transition to LTSS, this webinar does not apply to them anymore.
There's a comment from a provider that some of the personal supports recoupment was recouped from their residential advance, and DDA is not including this in our personal supports recoupment amount. If that's
Yeah, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
If it's a residential recoupment that happened in PS invoices, yeah, that will be included in the invoice detail. Yep, so that will essentially reduce the advance recoupment that DDA will take back.
Question here. Why aren't these recoupments handled via the typical quarterly reductions, at least for agencies not in LTSS? So again, we are talking about personal supports. That service transitioned into LTSS. I think need my team to correct me if I get it wrong, but I believe FY21 or 20. And so we
it's FY21.
Yeah,
it was
FY21.
the fall of 2020.
And so these advances were given to kind of and not recouped to for lack of a better term, serve as kind of a bridge so that providers got comfortable with the fee for service billing, got into a routine. We didn't want, to create any kind of cash flow issues for providers in case things kind of went awry during that transition. And so that's why, we're at a point now where we're recouping those advances. We've been doing personal supports in LTSS now for 2 fiscal years. And, but I don't believe, and I could be wrong, but I think we shut personal supports down, right? And PCIS 2 for,
That's correct.
yeah.
Yeah. Except
So
for micro borrowers, but that's another topic. Yeah.
Yeah. So we considered recouping from providers that are still in PCIS2 through quarterly advance, but many feedbacks we get after the first time we publish it. Most providers were looking for a clean recoupment. But just like we said in the presentation, any provider that wants us to recoup from their quarterly advance, quarterly payments in January, I think the 3rd day of January, should send email to me by the due date of this payment, which is October 30th. And then so we will now put their numbers into the ones we're going to be adjusting from our quarterly payment. So, and those who wants to make a payment by check, then they can send the FedEx, and those who want to do a wire transfer should also contact us so that we can give them, contact us with the wire authorization, and we'll complete the information for the bank. That's to enable us to track it.
Question, what if you paid from the previous invoice that was in PCIS 2 prior?
Any payment you made in PCIS 2, if you had a negative invoice in which you are paid in PCIS 2, it will be captured. So, but check when you receive or check your PCIS 2 for your invoice when it is released on September 30, and if there's any discrepancy or any variance that you need to resolve, then you can contact us on a case-by-case basis. This is a general presentation that covers 90% of the population, but if there's any case in which there are some deviations or variance that you think, you then contact us and we will review our calculation with you, and then you can show us where there was an error or anything like that.
Okay, next question. Is the recoupment invoice the final amount due? If we see other quarterly invoices in PCIS 2 that show an amount due and amounts higher than the invoice recoupment, will there be year-end reconciliations to finalize the close of each fiscal year for personal supports?
For personal support, when we did our reconciliation to come up with the amount due, which we're going to recoup from you either through direct adjustment from your payment in other services, or you sending us a check or wire transfer. So that closes our personal support from PCIS 2. Now, any other service you provide in PCIS 2 will still be there. So when that service comes up for reconciliation, or when the transition to LTSS, we will reconcile those services too.
Okay, we have a question. Peter, since you're on the line, I'll go ahead and read it. It's, what is the wait time for a resolution for access to PCIS 2 once a request has been sent to the help desk?
So if the question is how long does it take to get a user role, that should be no longer than 2 or 3 days, if not quicker.
Okay, so if the provider who asked this question is having a delay, should they contact you?
Yes, you can contact me directly and I will resolve it with the service desk team.
Okay.
And that's peter.defries@maryland.gov. And DeFries is spelled like defries, DEFRIES.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Peter, can you please put your email address in the chat?
Yes, I will. Let me finagle things right here, but I'll get it in there.
What are the options if the recoupment amount is higher than the advance?
I mean, you mean than the quarterly payment or than the advance? I mean, what does the message mean?
The quarterly payment.
Then that particular quarterly payment. Then we will recoup what is remaining on it from the next quarterly payment. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or they could satisfy the balance with a check.
Or they can send us a check. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. In your example, you went back to 2016. Based on what you're saying now, the examination period begins basically from November 2021, not as far back as 2016 in your example. Are you suggesting that those earlier years that went through DCAR be re-examined?
No, not re-examine. What we did was we took the advances, and then whatever DCAR has reconciled is part of the adjustments that is being made. So we are not on itself re-examining what DCAR has done or any agreement that you guys have settled on. All we are doing is take the advances and subtract what would make you what is ready to take over to adjust the advances. Like we take the advances and the take backs, then the adjustment. And the only other thing we added for you was those attendance in the system that you are not being paid for. That's the attendance was usually most of them happen because on the date of transition to LTSS, it was just cut off. And then the quarterly payment for that period was not done for those who entered attendance prior to that date. So we did the adjustment for that purpose. But for the DCAR, whatever reconciliation or balance in which you guys have had is part of the adjustment reconciliations.
Okay, and just one point of clarity. So to clarify, the recoupment can be taken from the January 2023 payments against other programs like residential, day, etc. Correct?
Yes. Actually, we will start from residential, and if there's no residential, then we'll go to day, and from there's no day, we'll go to the next program. But mostly our recoupment will be from the residential services for those who have residential services, and then going down the list based on which other service they have.
Are you posting this so we can go back and listen again? Yes, we will be posting this recording to YouTube and the DDA website. Pauline, there's also a request for your email as well in the chat.
Okay, I'll just enter it.
Yeah, thank you. Is this reconciliation replacing the annual cost report reconciliation for personal supports?
For most of the personal support providers should have submitted their reconciliation cost report to DCAR by now. So this reconciliation does not in any way replace that. What this reconciliation is, we are just trying to figure out how much we advanced you and how much has been taken back. So if there's still a standing issue with cost report, then that will be handled with the DCAR. And if there's a payment you made here that affect the balance DCAR request from you, then you should also notify DCAR about it at the end of the day.
Okay. Will the quarterly payment for residential support employment in day be reduced for purposes of recoupment?
For those who request us to adjust their quarterly payment, we will reduce it from residential services first, and if there's not enough to pay from residential service, we'll go to day and then to supportive employment and then to CLS. So that's the process we will adopt for that.
Okay, so I think it's important just for a point of clarity that the default for recouping these balances will be via invoice. So if providers want it withheld from their next quarterly payment, then they would have to proactively reach out to Paulina's and his team by the October 30th deadline to make that request. Can you take a portion of the recoupment from each service program?
We will take the recoupment first from residential, and if there's any balance remaining, we go to the next service. We're not going to apportion them service by service. We want to be able to take it in whole in one service, if possible.
Okay, and this is more of a statement that might be helpful for providers who are considering that these recoupments come out of their quarterly payments. DCAR has not finalized our attendance recs since 2018. It makes no sense to recoup advances when DCAR has not yet completed their tasks. Not sure if you have any comments regarding that comment, Paulinus, or just let it be.
No, DCAR reconciliation is a separate issue from reconciling advances we made to you, and then the takebacks we took back from you. So those are not, it has nothing to do with attendance, which DCAR is reconciling your end from the balances you have. So we are reconciling to be able to take back we could have just said we take the advances we gave you if you have not paid it back. So that's it. But the management decided to hold off a little bit to give the float to the provider since FY21 October. So this one is just trying to get back the money that was advanced that was not earned.
Thanks, Paulinus. Another question regarding the order of the recoupment. Is the order basically you're starting with the largest program first and then working your way down the list?
Yes.
Okay. Is it too late to come out of the October payment?
Yes.
Yeah, that file has already been submitted to
Yes.
ensure that you all get that payment on time. Okay. Will FY21 adjustments that recouped day have or supported employment negative advances recouped from personal support advances be factored into this personal support recoupment invoice?
This is personal support, but if there's any transaction in any other service that affects personal support, we'll take it into consideration or into account in our reconciliation.
Okay, just another comment here. Advances are part of the DCAR reconciliation process. If DDA recoups all our advances, DDA will end up owing providers a considerable amount. I don't think we're taking it from the earned. Is that correct?
No, we're taking the way we do an advance is that we give an advance and we take that back advance as a take back in whole unless there's there was a negative invoice. So at the end of the day, we only take the reconciliation itself will factor in everything transaction that goes in for DCAR part. But what we are trying to recover is these advances we have made to you. And we also have factored in any unpaid attendances or error updates that is in the system.
Question, can the ARPA funds 10% be held and applied to the recoupment payment? No, and again, I believe you're referring to the one-time emergency rate increase. That is being handled outside of the system, and not through the system, and so it doesn't take into account any balances or anything like that. However, with these advances, once they've been processed, right, you could use, part of that advance to pay off your personal support invoice, but it would be a separate process. This is probably more of a question for DCAR. Why haven't FY20 and 21 reconciliations been done? Not sure if you have any updates, Paulinus, or if we should just share this with our colleagues.
Yeah, that would be a question for DCAR anyway, so.
Yeah. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone. We are almost at the top of the hour. Again, thank you for your participation and your questions, and please do not hesitate to reach out to Paulinus if you have additional questions after this, or if you've sent us questions and we were not able to address your concerns either with the guidance we sent out last week or with this webinar. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your week.